Morning on World Soccer Talk. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Welcome into Soccer Morning on WorldSoccerTalk.com. Very happy to have you as we get underway here on the final day of the week for me, but not for you. You'll be sticking around. Thursday and Friday, we'll have Jonathan Tannenwald sitting in this seat. Well, not physically this seat. He'll be on the show. He'll be hosting. Jonathan Tannenwald is going to take care of the show while I'm gone for a couple of days, and I'll be back on Tuesday. But we've got a big show ahead of that today. Excellent guest lineup for you today, including, to start off, talking Champions League, our good friend Janusz Mihalik. He's coming up in just a couple of minutes. So much to cover in the Champions. I mean, wow. Wow, the Champions League. Hello, England. How are you? Not very good. I can see that. Also on this program, David Amoyal, our good friend who covers Serie A. He'll talk to us about Serie A, also about Italy in the Champions League, including Juve today. And perhaps England's woes will be Italy's gains in terms of Champions League spots. Perhaps. We'll get into all of that with David Amoyal. That's at 9:40 a.m. Eastern Time. Okay, let's go. Janusz Mihalik is awaiting. So let's hit the news before we do that and talk Champions League. Well, I'll start there. I'll start with the results and set the stage. Barcelona 2, Bayer Leverkusen 1. 1-0 to Bayer Leverkusen before Barcelona made their comeback. Sergio Roberto and Luis Suarez with the goals. Obviously, they were missing Lionel Messi, and they lose Andres Iniesta to a hamstring injury as well. Not a great day for Barcelona despite the win for various reasons. Papering over some cracks, perhaps, against Bayer Leverkusen. Bate Borisov, 3-2 winners at home over AS Roma. We'll talk to David about that one. Arsenal, home losers to Olympiacos. That's right, Olympiacos. Wenger burned by his decision to start David Ospina, who gave up a terrible, terrible own goal that eventually turned out to be the game winner. Olympiacos gets the win at the Emirates. Bayern Munich, 5-0 over Dinamo Zagreb. Robert Lewandowski continues his amazing form and scores a hat-trick in that game. FC Porto, 2-1 over Chelsea. Jose Mourinho goes back to Porto and loses. He dropped several big names for this match in a bid to shake things up, struggling Chelsea squad, talking about there not being any untouchables in this team, and it didn't work. It did not work. Maccabi Tel Aviv losing to Dynamo Kiev 2-0 at home. Lyon losing 1-0 to Valencia. Zenit St. Petersburg 2-1 over Ghent. Today's schedule, bunch of games today. Astana, Galatasaray. You have Malmo against Real Madrid. Shakhtar Donetsk hosting PSG. CSKA Moscow hosting PSV Eindhoven. Manchester United trying to get something good going for the English sides against Wolfsburg at home at Old Trafford. Atletico Madrid against Benfica. Gladbach will host Manchester City, who's trying to get their Champions League program on track after their loss to Juventus in the last match day. And Juventus, who we will talk to David about, is hosting Sevilla. U.S. Open Cup final tonight. Sporting Kansas City in Chester, Pennsylvania to take on the Philadelphia Union. Reports say that as many as 800 Sporting fans have traveled for this game. I don't believe that ticket sales were very brisk for the Union, so this might not be the most well-attended U.S. Open Cup final that we've seen, but it will be broadcast on television in high definition on ESPN2 at 7 p.m. Eastern. Reports have suggested, speaking of the Philadelphia Union, that they will hire Octavio Zambrano as their first technical director. Octavio Zambrano, of course, the former head coach of the Galaxy and the Metro Stars, last coach and technical director for El Nacional in his native Ecuador. This is a guy with the second highest winning percentage in league history as a manager, and now he looks to be stepping into a technical director role for the Union. They've desperately needed. They've been going on this search for a, quote, GM or a technical director or a sporting director, whatever the title happens to be, for more than a year now. Nick Sakevich talking very much about finding somebody to run the program. This is a good hire if Sakevich stays out of the way. If Sakevich allows Zambrano to do his job, this could be to the benefit of the Philadelphia Union. I think Union fans should be encouraged by this report. I'm not sure it's official yet. We will let you know when it is. Guillermo Cantu, Secretary General of the Mexican Football Federation, says that Jurgen Klopp turned down an offer or turned down an approach to be the Mexican national team manager. Obviously, Mexico looking for a replacement for Miguel Herrera. They have hired Ricardo Tuca Ferretti as a temporary manager. Interim maybe is the right tag. He's coaching club. He's coaching country. He'll take this Mexican team into the U.S. showdown at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. Rumored candidates for the Mexico job have been numerous, and they've included Marcelo Bielsa, Juan Carlos Osorio, Jorge Sampaoli, Gustavo Matosas. So we don't know exactly where things sit right now with the Mexican national team head coaching position. They seem to be going through an immense Rolodex of names. Many names are getting phone calls or approaches or have been rumored. It seems like every week we've got a new candidate for the Mexican national team job. We'll see if they get this done. Probably not ahead of the USA-Mexico game, of course, which happens a week from Saturday. By the way, let me remind you or let you know, I will be doing Rabble.tv with Jared Dubois for USA-Mexico. That should be fun. Saturday night, October 10th, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Russia's 2018 World Cup preparations, are running into trouble with the country's sports minister saying that 4 host cities are well behind on construction of accommodations for players, coaches, and officials. Now you think, okay, players, coaches, and officials, that's not a lot of people. They can get that done. Well, there's also reports that say that only 5 of the 11 cities so far have enough accommodations for supporters as well. So the fans who may travel to Russia may find it difficult to find a place to stay. We've had previous reports of Russia looking to put people into campgrounds and the like. It doesn't seem like this is coming together very well for the Russians. They do have a little less than 3 years to be ready. Let's hope that's the case. Let's hope they stamp out the racism that seems to be rampant in Russian football and Russian society. How about that? Let's do that. Let's take a break, as a matter of fact. Janusz Michalek will join us. We'll talk all of the Champions League in just a couple of minutes. Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning, WorldSoccerTalk.com.
Face in the crowd, you're talking too loud, but I can't hear you calling.
When it comes to the USA against Mexico, this game's different. As Michael Bradley puts it, the passion, the colors, the respect, the hate. Soccer Morning listeners, I'd like to invite you to join me and Jared Dubois this Saturday for the USA versus Mexico broadcast on Rabble.tv at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. With Rabble, the concept is simple. All you have to do is tune into the USA versus Mexico game on TV, press the mute button, and then head on over to Rabble.tv to listen to me and Jared on your desktop, through your iOS Android app, or through your mobile browser. Plus, before or during the game, you can join in by posting your questions or observations in the comments section. Or why don't you create your own broadcast? Call one of your team's games. It's easy. Sign up for free today. Try it out. Join me and Jared this Saturday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern for the USA versus Mexico on Rabble.tv, where it's your team and your call.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
Here we are with an opportunity to review everything that's happened in the Champions League, perhaps even look ahead to today's matches with our good friend Janusz Mihalik. You know him from all over the place. Janusz, how are you?
I am doing well, Jason. How are you? I hear you're going on vacation.
I'm taking
something?
a couple of days off. You know how hard it is sometimes to pull yourself away. Janusz, even if you know your brain needs the rest and you have to sort of step away from the game, there's always something happening.
It's impossible. I can't believe, first of all, that you need vacation from such a great job you have.
This is
true.
I
mean, it's serious. A couple hours of work and unbelievable. I mean, you can say what you want, you can talk to anyone you want, and you need vacation from that. Christ,
Janusz, stop, please. All right, so let's talk Champions League. Janusz, obviously lots of discussion about the English teams yesterday. Arsenal, Chelsea, both losers. I suppose I have to start there. We'll get two other teams going today. This is also compounded by Manchester City losing at home to Juventus from a winning position on the last match day. And obviously Manchester United has been fine to this point, and maybe they're the savior of English football. But what's going on?
Well, there's so many theories, I suppose. Everybody says, it's different in playing in Europe. I think there's a lot to be said about that. The narrative, in the past, I guess, Jason, was the British players didn't know, it was just different, right? But, if you look at these teams, there are hardly any British players. The problem, of course, is the tempo of the game, and that's the issue because, even players that come from abroad, from continent to England, I think they forget how to play properly. I really do, and it's not necessarily their fault, Jason, right?
Yeah.
You get thrown into this high-tempo game that even though probably their brain says, well, you can do it differently, but the supporters won't allow you to it. You know what I mean? They throw number forward because that's what the game dictates in England. That's what the fans want. Can you imagine, Arsenal or Chelsea? Yeah, well, Chelsea does that from time to time, but any of the teams kind of, taking the foot off the pedal and knocking the ball sideways and backwards, as you need to at times in the game, right? Because sometimes you can't just overcommit going forward. And we've seen it with Arsenal, how quickly they got caught by Olympiacos after scoring, right? It's this naivety of playing a certain way in England, and then you go to Europe, you have to do it differently. So I think a lot of it has to do with that. And, other fact is with Chelsea, they've never been in a situation like this. Yeah. Jose Mourinho is scrambling. Let's face it here, and he's picking a fight with his players, which he has the right to, by the way. I had no problems with him leaving certain players, behind and not starting the likes of Hazard. And, he's done it over time. He has that right. But the bottom line is, and Jason, you and I know that because we've seen them here in the preseason. I've commentated some games, even against that Red Bull 2 game. People say, well, it's a friendly. They don't take it seriously. But you could see some problems here. Look, the bottom line with Chelsea is that Jose Mourinho did not prepare his team properly for the season. Because at first, in the first couple of weeks, we said, well, Hazard hasn't been playing well, says Fabregas. This is not just 1, 2, or 3 players not performing. This is almost the entire Chelsea team that's not performing. And there's only one reason for that early in the season is that somewhere out there, Jose Mourinho did not get it right in terms of preparing his team.
Yeah, like the overarching discussion is, well, England is bad in Europe or England is bad in the Champions League. And I guess that's true, but I think it's important, as you've done, to sort of pick out these individual cases. Chelsea's problems are these problems, and they've obviously been there for the entire beginning of their season. Arsenal's problems are Arsenal. Those are not new Arsenal problems. They're just they're the same ones, and we're seeing them again in the Champions League. Janusz.
Yeah, with Arsenal, it's just simple. Arsene Wenger can tell us all he wants. He believes in his players. By the way, I would have loved to play for Arsenal when I was a player because, one thing is he would love his players to a fault, right? How long, you saw Diaby, somebody like Flamini scores 2 goals but never plays and stays there. Nothing's asked of him, right? Remember they still have Thomas Rosicky. How long has Rosicky been there, injured or not? Yeah, he'll pop in or pop out. some are out there for a game, and people will get excited again, and he won't play again. So I don't think these players at Arsenal are challenged. I mean, they feel comfortable because they know that the changes won't be made, and I don't even want to go back to that to the center of the midfield and even the back. Arsenal continues to neglect the needs they have. Everybody's talking about the problem at forward, and yes, one exists there. There's no questions about that. But the same problems. Look at this. Look how simple it can be. Look at Manchester United. I mean, we can agree or not, right? If they're still playing great. They're not playing great. No. They're in the top of the table in the Premier League, but they're not doing anything special. But look, for the last 2 or 3 years, what have we been saying, right? They have an issue when Scholes left. They have an issue in the center of the pitch. So what do? They've had Carrick, who's been wonderful for him, but that's all they had, right? When he wasn't in the side last 2 years, we were complaining, how come Manchester United doesn't do it? Well, they've done it. They won and got Bastian Schweinsteiger, and they've got Schneiderlin. So between Carrick, Schweinsteiger, and Schneiderlin, they have such a central core, that we almost forget that still in the back they have issues, which, by the way, Manchester United still hasn't addressed, in my opinion. But that key part of the pitch has been addressed. We've asked this of Manchester United. They've done it. Arsenal continues to do that. They are a naive team that gets you excited because of their talent from time to time, but long term is a team that's not going to be winning the major trophies.
Yeah, look, maybe Arsenal is just snake bitten or something. I mean, look, I don't know if it's the right thing to do to start David Ospina in that match necessarily, Giannis, but clearly, in retrospect, we're all going to throw criticism Arsene Wenger's way because Ospina was a major part of them losing that game with that ridiculous own goal.
Yeah, and he's done it already with Czech. He's rested him. I think, it's hindsight, but this was a big game. There's, no questions about that. And I think early in the season, when things aren't settled, you still go with your best starting 11. And I think they were looking, they have a pretty big game on the weekend, right? Why can't I remember who they're playing?
I'll find it for you, Anish. It's not in my head right now either because we're still focused on the Champions League, but I will.
Right, but I mean, I do believe.
Oh, Man United. Man United.
Man United, and I can't imagine that was a reason for not starting, Czech. I think he's just trying to keep Ospina happy for God knows only what reason. You have a player like Czech, goalkeepers when healthy. I think you need to have them there. Never mind that, but I mean, look at Petr Cech is still establishing himself at Arsenal in terms of that psychology of kind of understanding the pluses and minuses of the back four in front of him. So I don't get it. And even if there's no mistake, I would have said the same thing, right? It doesn't matter. For me, Petr Cech needs to play because he's new to the team and you want to establish that back four or back five. That's always been a problem for Arsenal with him in the lineup. So, look, I think they thought that they're going to beat Olympiacos. I think they've been paired with them for something like 4 times in the last 7 years with Olympiacos. The home side usually gets a result, and I think they took it for granted. I really do think that they thought no matter what they throw out there, they were going to beat Olympiacos and get ready for Manchester United and all that good stuff. But it's a mistake that's going to be costly because we all know that they have Bayern Munich back-to-back coming right now. And look, barring a miracle, I don't know if they if it's going to be all that easy for them coming out of this group.
Yeah, they've lost to Olympiacos and Dinamo Zagreb, and they're not supposed to lose to those teams. And now it's obviously a major challenge.
Yeah, Jason. I mean, you just said it right there. This is Arsenal. They've lost these 2 games that no matter what you think the reason for it was, there's no possibility that Arsenal should be losing to both Dinamo Zagreb and Olympiacos. Mm-hmm. Just no matter what the reasons are, just too good of a club, spending way too much money. If you look at their the wages and all that, that should not be happening. And I don't necessarily think that we go, well, what's happening with the British teams, this, that, or the other. None of that. In terms of Arsenal, that goes out the window. That right there, even if there was the worst formation or whatever you want to say, they've got to win both games, at the very least one.
I mean, look. I mean, let's look at Barcelona. Of course, Barcelona is a league ahead of Arsenal, and just in terms of where they sit right now. Barcelona is one of the top teams in the world, but they've lost Lionel Messi. They're dealing with that. They end up falling behind against Bayer Leverkusen. They found a way to win. That doesn't mean that everything's great necessarily, Giannis, and you can certainly give us an impression of where Barcelona sits, having to deal without Messi, and now Iniesta's injured as well. But they found a way to do that, especially at home.
Yes, they have. I mean, there's always a little bit of luck. I mean, 1-2 punch, right? Couple of minutes, they got it right. They didn't look right. There are issues over there, of course, because you can look at Barcelona. Here's the deal about Barcelona and Leo Messi. Look, I mean, you're always going to miss a player like this. But if you have in your squad, if you have in your team, Luis Suarez and Neymar, the front three, we're talking attacking, and you can't cope with that, then you don't belong in La Liga or Champions League. I mean, imagine you still have Luis Suarez and Neymar. That should be enough. They should be really. I don't want to say no talk about Leo Messi because, of course, he's so important, in everything that we do in this sport. But they have so much that they should be able to sustain that for the time being. The problem with Barcelona is that even with Leo Messi, if you look at their band and all that, they are very thin in depth and in quality coming off the bench. Because remember, Rafinha's out for the season as well. So when you look at them, I would, this would be a good time to perhaps take advantage of that, because really, I don't think that Barcelona have players coming off the bench that can change the game the way normally, you think of Barcelona playing coming off the bench. They have to get themselves in a good position in La Liga and Champions League until January, which I think they will do that, because of course they're going to have, everybody's talking about Arda Turan, but they also have Aleix Vidal, whom I love. Is a great player, that came over from Sevilla, I think, and can play right back and right mid, a little bit of a winger as well. But Barcelona has the issue past Leo Messi, because that's not the sort of depth that we're used to coming off the bench.
So there you go. All right, so we've got Barcelona winners, Arsenal losers, Chelsea. Let's come to Chelsea, and you sort of addressed again their problems to start. Mourinho scrambling here, and more than what the issues are in the team, and again whether or not they prepared properly. What is it about Jose Mourinho? I mean, again, the narratives are easy because they feel so right, Janusz, and in this case, it's Mourinho getting that itch again and not necessarily being comfortable where he is, even though he made this whole to-do about coming back to Chelsea, and this is the club that he loves, and he won a title, but it feels wrong. It feels like it's slipping away.
on them, but I didn't see this collapse. But look, I don't care how big a team is. If you don't have some key players, I think you're going to suffer. And you're seeing that with Manchester City. David Silva has been a big loss. I think the way Company has started, of course, and Mangala, who's finally, remember, Mangala was under tremendous amount of pressure last year. It took him a long, long time to kind of adjust to the Premier League. But I think those two finally have. And all of a sudden you have two players in the heart of defense that are not there. Hart wasn't playing again, right? Similar situation there. There's a bit of a knock on, in terms of injury with him, but Willie Caballero's been struggling as we know it. It's a kind of same situation as Ospina in the last, who they lose to against Spurs, I think 4-1.
Yes.
So, so you're taking three players, that are so important, goalkeeper, two center backs, and you look at, not playing without Silva. I don't want to overthink it. I really think that sometimes it's that simple, right, Jason? I mean, any team that you look, even the teams that, you and I played, even if it's, playing with friends, I mean, you always know who the go-to guys are. Yeah. When you struggle, you know who to find that may be able to bring you back into the game. And I think some of it you have to put to that. But psychology plays a big role for me. Pellegrini, we go from liking him to kind of firing him the next day. There's got to be his softness sometimes as a person, I think, as a manager, his softness sometimes comes through the team because to get that sort of response or non-response against Spurs, that's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
There's got to be a bigger issue in I want to say him being a nice man, kind of quiet man, which is okay. Not everybody has to be the super vocal leader or a cheerleader. But that mentality has to come from within. And I have to say, after the lack of effort I saw against Spurs, I don't know if Pellegrini is capable of stumping his foot and, doing sort of what Mourinho is trying to do.
It's interesting because that's why he was brought in to replace Roberto Mancini. And by the way, I think my brain somehow switched Manchester United to a winner in their first game. Obviously, they didn't. They lost to PSV Eindhoven, so they're in a desperate situation, as you said, reasonably desperate. Wolfsburg's going to be tough. But if Pellegrini is not the guy, then are we on the verge of another switch for Manchester City? They have to go find somebody. I mean, are they going to make a run for Klopp again? Are they going to? What can they possibly do?
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do in the meantime because I don't know. Klopp could be one. Obviously, there's talk about Liverpool. There's talk about him. I think ideally, as you hear, I think he would want to wait for Bayern Munich to open up. But sometimes you force into the situation because if indeed, say Manchester City comes in, more so than Liverpool, that'll be a lot more enticing. I hate to say that with Liverpool because I have a soft spot for them, but obviously Manchester City is going to be a lot more enticing in terms of what you can do and how much you can buy. He may, because look, Pellegrini, if they go out again like this, you're going to have to start thinking about making a decision. As I said, when you had Mancini, he was tough. He wasn't necessarily, very, very loud, but I think you need a little bit of a cheerleader sometimes. You know what I mean? Sometimes you do need somebody out there that will motivate you. Their personality may just do it. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't be shocked to see that. Look, if City lose to Mönchengladbach, no English team has ever beaten Gladbach in Germany. I read some notes, long time ago, actually, Gladbach knocked out Manchester City from Europa League, just so you know, but that's too long ago to even bring it here. But I think I wouldn't be shocked to see a change at City because it's just, it would be another failure in Europe. You having a team that, it's not collapsing yet, but after that perfect start, what was it, 5 games in Premier League with, perfect record, no goals conceded. You're seeing not just losses, but the sort of effort against Spurs. That team was dead. There's nothing or nobody, no leadership on the field and no leadership off the field to change that. Then you got to kind of, all the old stuff comes back, right? Because the questions went away because of that perfect start. But now people are saying, okay, is this sustainable? Obviously, Pellegrini hasn't been able to sustain any of that, and especially in the Champions League, which is, it's got to be a priority for Manchester City. Of course, they want to get back and win the Premier League, but they've done it already. I mean, this team spent money and is built to be the best in the world. I mean, I imagine that this is the idea of the ownership that's spending that money, that they want to get the name of Manchester City globally to be on par with that of Manchester United, and maybe the old teams of Liverpool, Real Madrid, and Barcelona. And until they do something special in that competition, that's not going to happen. Yeah, I'm not even sure if it's ever going to happen, right? So you look at this Manchester City, who's been continuously failing in Champions League, and remember in the beginning we were sort of saying the first year or two, well, they're paying the price because they don't have the experience in Europe. Well, how long are we going to be saying that? I mean, they've been in Europe now for 4 or 5 years, and they've spent more money than anybody. So I wouldn't be shocked if they were to lose in Gladbach. I think there should be some panic there for sure.
Yeah, it's again the overarching narrative is, what's wrong with English teams? But again, I think this is individually, each one of these teams has a very specific situation that is affecting them.
Jason, just quickly here, and the bottom line, because we have this little bit of a narrative, right, on this side of the pond against the other side of the pond, and I'm not really in that fight for the most part. It's a friendly banter in some way. But there is always, and it doesn't have to be America. This is what people don't understand, because I come from Europe, and there is always, you play against English teams, you want to beat them for those reasons. And those reasons are sometimes just what we often talk about. It's, we are the best. Premier League is the best. England, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I know that there's a lot of English folks, people that we know in the media, they know that that's not the case. But if you go, how else you explain Dinamo Zagreb, right? I mean, it's impossible otherwise. Teams in Europe get out for English team that little bit of extra. Yeah, it's just the bottom line.
Very, very, very astute point. Janusz Mihalik, go follow him on Twitter. Janusz Mihalik is one of the best broadcasters out there. I love having you on the show, Janusz. Thanks so much for the insight, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you through the rest of the Champions League campaign.
Thanks, Jason, and I hope you have awesome places to go on your vacation, and we'll be listening to you on Sirius Radio soon enough.
There you go. You can also hear Janusz on
And thanks
Sirius
to World
Radio.
Soccer Talk, of course, because I'm a big fan.
Absolutely. There goes Janusz Mihalik. Good stuff from him. When we come back, David Amoyel will shift down to Italy and talk about Serie A, and also there's Italian teams in the Champions League as well. Soccer Morning, WorldSoccerTalk.com. Be right back. When it comes to the USA against Mexico, this game's different. As Michael Bradley puts it, the passion, the colors, the respect, the hate. Soccer Morning listeners, I'd like to invite you to join me and Jared Dubois this Saturday for the USA versus Mexico broadcast on Rabble.tv at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. With Rabble, the concept is simple. All you have to do is tune into the USA versus Mexico game on TV, press the mute button, and then head on over to Rabble.tv to listen to me and Jared on your desktop, through your iOS Android app, or through your mobile browser. Plus, before or during the game, you can join in by posting your questions or observations in the comments section. Or why don't you create your own broadcast? Call one of your team's games. It's easy. Sign up for free today. Try it out. Join me and Jared this Saturday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern for the USA versus Mexico on Rabble.tv, where it's your team and your call.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
All right, we are back on Soccer Morning. We're going to turn now to Italy, Serie A, Italian teams in the Champions League, rather, with the man who has more copycat accounts than anyone else I know, David Moyal. What is that all about, David?
It's great to be on. Thanks for having me, and especially for having me after such a great guest. So I'm excited to be here.
Yes, David on Twitter is David Moyal, except no substitutions. AMOYAL. All right, David. Let's. We did Champions League with Giannis. I think it's easy to just roll into Italy and their Champions League fortunes. For obviously Juve's got Sevilla today. We can come to that. But Roma in a wider context, both what happened yesterday against Bate Borisov, but in general the state of Roma's campaign so far. Where are we? Because this is the grand project of Italian football.
I agree. I think Roma this season, they have a great opportunity to win the league. Last time we talked, we discussed how Juve has taken a step back to take two forward. Got rid of a lot of veterans, brought in some younger players that they need to assimilate. I didn't expect Juve to get off to such a bad start, but I certainly expected them to not be running out of the gate either. So Roma, has a great opportunity to win the league title. They've been off to an okay start, nothing great. I think they've been really hurt by injuries now. Dzeko, I think, was a superb signing for them. Even if he hasn't scored really much, he really brings a lot to the table. They haven't had a central striker like that in years. I think Roma, too, saw Juve taking a step back, and they made some sacrifices on the market. They brought in Salah, who was sensational at Fiorentina. They decided to keep Iturbe. After all, they sold some players that weren't really on their squad last season in Bertolacci and Romagnoli, and they kind of financed their acquisitions by that. So compared to years past where they lost key players on the team and they had to replace them, they were playing with house money, essentially. So not off to a great start in Serie A, and yesterday I thought it was very disappointing. They were down 3-0 against Bate, who had really struggled against Leverkusen. They had only been out of their half of the pitch 3 times in that match. So certainly very disappointing yesterday.
So let's turn now to Juve, as you talked about it, not coming out of the gates that strong, an expected step back. But what does this mean for their Champions League campaign, building off of what they managed to do last year as a finalist?
Well, what's interesting with Juve is, up until last season, there was a perception, which I think was based a lot in reality, that they struggled in Europe and were great in Italy. Last season, they won the league title, but they didn't, get anywhere near as close to the number of points they had in the preceding season, but they made it to the Champions League final. I think even the most optimistic Juve fan was very happy with that. And this season, they really struggled in Serie A, and they had that huge win in Manchester against City. So it seems like tables have a little bit turned for Juve. Allegri, the coach they brought from Milan, really changed their mentality to try to win in Europe more. But now it may have gone a little bit too far. In Serie A, they certainly have struggled. There were a couple of matches where I think the result was a little bit deceiving against Udinese and Frosinone. They only collected 1 point at home, but they had an inordinate amount of shots on goal that didn't go through. But there's definitely reasons to be concerned about Juve. I think they need a win tonight just for the team morale, but they really need to get back on track in Serie A. If they don't win the title, so be it. They've won 4 in a row, but they really cannot afford to be out of the Champions League next season.
No, and we're going to come to that. Obviously, Juventus starting well in the Champions League with that win away to Manchester City. Maybe you don't expect those points, so they're okay. They need to beat Sevilla, as you said, maybe for confidence morale. And Robert in Southern California has asked on Twitter who you see making the Champions League spots. Now that's a long season. There's a long way to go. David, we don't know how things are going to play out in terms of injuries and signings and everything else. But Juve has to be in that group to maintain. I mean, this what happens, of course, with these big clubs is you need that revenue. You need the Champions League money to keep yourself going with the same sort of momentum. Otherwise, you take a massive step back. So when you look at the potential Champions League qualifiers, Juventus is going to be trying to get there, but who do you have? Who do you have right now if you had to pick it?
It's a great question, and I appreciate the person tweeting it in. I would say there's going to be a group of teams. You're going to have Roma, Napoli. To me, look like two teams that'll definitely be competing for that. Then I think Juve, once they get their injured players back, and Khedira is finally going to be back. He's been out. He got an injury in the preseason. He's going to start today. So I think Juve, once they get their injured players back, and once they start integrating some of their new players, I think it's still early enough in the season that they can contend. Then we saw Inter off to a very good start. They lost pretty heavily against Fiorentina, but they won their first 5 matches. Maybe not in brilliant fashion, but, what I've learned is sometimes you get those ugly wins. It's just as many points as when you win 5-0. So I think Inter is going to be in the mix with that. And then I think, there's a growing middle class of teams in Italy that's really fascinating. I think Fiorentina really deserves a lot of credit. This summer, there was so much drama with Salah going on. You also see 2 of their former stars, Cuadrado and Jovetic, who are doing, really well for Juve. In Inter, you add all that up, and Fiorentina is doing really, really well. Their coach that they hired, Paolo Sosa, has been doing very well for them. So I think, they're going to be in the conversation for that as well. I think Lazio, too, is a team to watch as well. And you never know. There could be a spoiler like Torino, who's a team that's gaining a lot of attention because of the way they play. So I think there's really this interesting growing middle class of teams in Italy, and I'm going to write about that later this week. And there's also Sassuolo, who's a team that plays a lot of Italian players in offensive style. Their big star is Domenico Berardi, who is really a player to watch. So I think it's going to be a really fascinating season in Serie A. There's really a lot of parity. It kind of reminds me a little bit of what we see with the NFL right now. Not a dominating team, but a lot of good teams competing.
Yeah, it seems as though there is sort of this group of teams who are all relatively close together, and obviously with Juventus having taken a step back, I think I mean from an outsider's perspective, not necessarily invested all that much in Serie A, I can say that I think it would probably be good to have a new champion this season. Speaking of Champions League spots, David, so much being made of the English teams struggling in the Champions League so far in the group stages, not a win among them. Games today for Manchester United, Manchester City as they try to get right. There's a little bit of talk about Italy maybe getting a spot back. Is that something that you see coming down the pipe, and how does that benefit the league? Obviously, massively.
It would definitely financially be a big benefit. I think Italy, I'm not a huge expert on coefficient, but Italy's competing with England for that spot. It would really help for Roma to get out of their group. Despite yesterday's loss, it's not a very difficult group. I think they're really going to be competing with Bayer Leverkusen after Barcelona to get out of the group. So despite yesterday, I think they can still make it. I think, Italy really could use the teams in the Europa League to do well. For the second season in a row, we saw Lazio get eliminated in the preliminary round. That happened to Napoli the previous season. And it's kind of like a hangover for those teams. I think it's never easy to be in the Europa League when you thought you'd be in the Champions League. But I look at the teams that are in the Europa League. Fiorentina could do well. So I think it'd be great for the league. I think everyone in Italy started giving more importance to the Europa League once they decided that if you win it, you make it to the Champions League. So I think this could be the season that we see a 4th place being added to Italy. And I think what would really help is making the 3rd place team an automatic qualifier to the group stage, because like I mentioned, both Lazio and Napoli have been eliminated in that round in the past 2 years.
All right, so we've got an interesting beginning to the season. Again, Juventus 4 wins, 4 championships in a row, 4 Scudettos in a row. Now they're obviously trying to rebuild after seeing some major figures leave. Fiorentina top of the table at the moment. Let's shed some praise on the teams that have overachieved so far in 2015. David, again, it's a long season, lots of games to go. Only 6 played, but if you had to pick out a team that you're a little surprised to see doing so well, or if you want to flip it around, teams that are obviously disappointing, that would be who is that as well?
Well, I think there's we talked a little bit about Fiorentina, Sassuolo, and Torino. I think Torino is really a fascinating team. They sold Darmian to Manchester United, and he's kind of changing a little bit the perception that former Serie A players struggle in the Premier League. Really been sensational. Everyone that followed him closely with Italy and Torino is not surprised. So Torino, they lost him. They reinvested the money they received for him very well. They got this midfielder, Baselli, who used to be on Atalanta, who's been off the sensational start for them. They kept their defense, their two center backs, Glick and Maximovic. Maximovic's been hurt, but he's a very good player. So they're a very interesting team. They have veterans up front. They have Pagliarella and Maxi Lopez, the good strikers. So Torino, in years past, they had sold Cerci and Immobile, and they have kind of been bust since they left Torino. I think Torino really has one of the best coaches in Serie A, Giampiero Ventura. He's kind of an old school Italian coach who really gets the most out of his players. So I think, for a casual Serie A observer, someone who maybe would like to try a new team on FIFA that might be fun to use, I would recommend Torino.
All right, David, the state of, and I always do this, I'm a big picture guy, I can't help it, the state of Italian football. We've talked about the Champions League spot. That would obviously be a big benefit financially. But in terms of the general finances, we've seen struggles in clubs with major problems and disappearing. And obviously we know infrastructure in Italy has long lagged behind the rest of Europe. Clubs trying to make Juventus opening up their beautiful new building a couple of years ago. Roma's trying to get theirs done. Where do things stand in a general sense in Italy, trying to maintain some parity with some of the best leagues in the continent?
It's a really great question, and it's a complicated answer. I would say, clubs in Italy have historically found very good formulas to acquire players. The formula of getting a player on loan with option to buy. And then now we see some new 2-year loan deals with forced option to buy that Italian clubs trademark. And now other clubs, Bayern, use that formula to acquire Koeman from Juve. So I think, there's been a lot of creative accounting, for lack of a better word, and it's possible that it's going to come back to bite some of these clubs. Inter had really a great summer in the transfer market. They acquired a lot of really good players, but they really put, it's not that they bought them outright, they bought them on loans with options to buy. They're kind of basically kicking the can down the road for when they have to pay these players. So I think, if they don't make the Champions League next season, they might be in big trouble. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. There's some other clubs who are very fiscally responsible. I think Napoli, they've always turned a profit under their president, De Laurentiis, who's from the family of the movie producers. They've been a very conservative club financially. I think it's really benefited, but they're really more the exception rather than the rule. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Milan if this deal with this mysterious Mr. B goes through. There seems to be really a lot of issues going on with that. They certainly could use an influx of cash there. The problem is the stadiums. There's really not many clubs who are really making an effort to build new stadiums. Right now, it's really only Juve and Udinese that have state-of-the-art stadiums. So I think there's still some concerns with the finances. I think getting that extra Champions League spot, though, would help Italian soccer as a whole financially.
Obviously, when I reference clubs disappearing or having to be relegated due to financial, we would talk about Parma and the situation at Parma. As long as that's not going to create a domino effect across Italian football, I imagine it can be contained. But has Italian football done a good job of trying to learn lessons from what's happened?
Yes and no. I think, the Parma one was shocking to a lot of people because it's a club that people know outside of Italy. But this is somewhat fairly common in Italy. My hometown team, who Alexi Lalas used to play for, went bankrupt and had to start over from the 4th division. This does happen. I'm not saying frequently, but it does happen here and there. I think, in Italy, they're trying. I think the Parma thing might have been a moment where maybe clubs are going to change that attitude. I think the fact that now there's so much looking at what's going on with Milan and this deal with Mr. B is a sign that they don't want another Parma to happen. But I still have a little bit of concerns about that. I think, Italy as a whole needs to make a commitment to be a little bit more transparent financially with the club.
When we talk about AC Milan, you did mention to me before we came on the air that Kevin Prince Boateng may be making a return to AC Milan. We know about Mario Balotelli and the continued struggle to figure out his talent and how to make it come good. Where do things stand right now with AC Milan?
To me, Milan, good or bad, is always the most fascinating club in Italy. They're definitely the most entertaining, and I think they're the most fun club to write about. So I think, this season, what was very positive about Milan is they finally spent a lot of money in the summer. They were the club that spent the most net sales-wise, as Wenger would say. So they spend the money. I think the jury's still out if they spent the money well, but it's certainly an improvement from getting guys on loans and free transfers. Balotelli so far has been playing pretty well for them. I think there's a little less pressure because he's not expected to be the savior and a full-time starter. And I think they're kind of taking the same approach with Kevin Prince Boateng. He's back training with the team today. He can't sign with them until January. He's still under contract with Schalke, but it looks almost sure that he'll be a Milan player. His agent is someone that works a lot with Milan, so I think he'll be part of the team. He had been linked to MLS for a little bit, but he's been in Milan a lot, so I think he'll join the team in January. Milan, though, will continue to be really an enigma to me. 3 coaches later, I don't see a big improvement from Allegri. I think Mihailovic is a very good coach. Let's see, though, if the personnel that they spent a lot of money on this summer can really elevate the team, though.
David, since I have you very quickly before I let you go, looking at the list of games for this weekend, if you had to pick one, where should people turn their attention?
I think Milan-Napoli is going to be a great match. Napoli had a great performance against Juve. I'm a huge fan of their coach, Sarri, who was at Empoli before. I think what we saw against Juve was really the blueprint of what his teams do. His teams play very compact. They put a lot of pressure on the opposing team, and the other team has possession, and they're just very creative offensively. I think Higuain has been an absolute joy to watch. If I had to say who the best player in Serie A is right now, I would probably pick him, and Insigne is having really a strong comeback from his injury. Milan, is going to be desperate for points. Their executive director, Galliani, already went to the training session yesterday to tell the team that they really need to do better after all the investment. So that's the game that I'm really going to be watching for. It's the late Sunday game. So I think that's going to be a really good one.
Gonzalo Higuain, the one of the best players in Italy at the moment, and yet can't get into the Argentinian national team. David Amoyal on the Soccer Morning with us talking Italy. David, great stuff as always. I'm sure we'll be talking to you very soon about developments in Italy, both Champions League and within the league. Appreciate the time.
Great. Thank you so much. And just one last thing, we're starting to cover a lot more MLS on our website. We're really trying to introduce the league. We have a lot of readers, in Europe, outside of the U.S. So if any of the listeners are interested in contributing, please contact me. My Twitter account is my email address. I'm sure you're not contacting one of my impersonators, but contact me, and I'd be very happy to talk to you more about it. So thanks again, Jason, for having me on.
You're welcome, Dave. David Amoyal, Amoyal on Twitter, all together. You'll figure it out. Gianluca DiMarzio is the website. As David said, they're covering MLS more and more. All right, here's an opportunity for us to go ahead and step aside and get back on the air and talk to you guys. If I can just find what I'm looking for on my little button thing here. Phone lines will be open for however long they need to be. So call us up. Soccer Morning, WorldSoccerTalk.com. Be right back.
Don't throw stones at me. Don't tell anybody. Whoa. Trouble finds me. Oh, the noise of
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
Here we are back on Soccer Morning, Wednesday edition of the program. All right, here's what I need to tell you about tomorrow, Friday, and Monday. I'm going on a bit of a vacation. Yes, I'm stepping aside for a couple of days. Don't worry, though. Jonathan Tannenwald from Philly.com is going to be filling in. He's going to do an excellent job. But you need to be aware that the web show, this program, WorldSoccerTalk.com, during Jonathan's stay, will move to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Okay, just adjust your alarms and your notices accordingly. It's only 1 hour, not a big deal. Jonathan Tannenwald filling in Soccer Morning, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Thursday, Friday, Monday. I will return on Tuesday, October 8th. Right. Yes. So I'm stepping away to celebrate my birthday, but I'll come back ready to go. Oh, fired up. And I've been asked, man. Giannis just sort of making fun of me a little bit there when we had him on the show about, having this job and needing a vacation. Of course, he's just giving me a hard time. We all need vacations no matter what we do. But he said something interesting about, I said it's difficult to step away. And I've already had that discussion with my significant other about being able to put the phone down during my vacation. I've already been told you won't be able to survive without your phone. You won't be able to survive without checking Twitter and soccer news every 5 minutes. And you know what? She might be slightly right. And it's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard. It's going to be like taking a pacifier away from an infant. Why would you do that? If it makes them happy, let them be happy. That's what I'm saying. All right. Big game tonight. PPL Park, Chester, Pennsylvania. A crowd of 5,000 might be on hand. I don't know. Mike in Philly, what's going on?
A little more than 5,000. Not a sellout. It's not looking like a sellout, but I think they'll match what they had last year, which honestly was probably the best. I've been to, I think, every game at PPL Park, and last year's Open Cup final was hands down the best atmosphere there.
Yeah.
Loudest it's ever been, and I expect tonight to be the same. I'm thinking 15 to 16,000.
Okay, well, look, that's strong. That's pretty strong. For a Wednesday night, and you know what? How's the weather in Philly? Because I know down here in D.C., it's pretty wet.
It's a little rainy. They're saying it's going to stop around 3 o'clock.
Okay.
So it should be fine for game time.
Okay, because Hurricane Joaquin is messing with the weather on the East Coast. My trip is messing with my trip, and I didn't know if you were going to end up having a sort of deluge situation on the banks of the river there for this game, which would obviously dampen the crowd.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, it's a little bit of a disappointment that we can't manage to sell this out. That being said, I'm trying not to worry about it. The river end's completely sold out. Last year's as jam-packed as I've ever seen it. This year is probably going to be the same. So it's going to be an amazing atmosphere, regardless of if it's a technical sellout or not.
All right, well,
everyone who's there wants to be there.
Mike, what's interesting about the state of the Philadelphia Union, and I've seen this argument made. I hate this argument. I hate the we need to lose to get better argument. I hate it when it's brought up with the national team. I just hate it. I think it's ridiculous. No fan should ever buy into the idea that a loss is better for their team than a win. But I've heard it said, and I'd love to get your response, that if the Union win this cup, if they win the trophy tonight and they beat Sporting Kansas City, it just puts a Band-Aid on something that's a gaping wound. Now, if Octavio Zambrano's coming in, maybe that helps. But if you do you buy into the notion that winning only gives the current regime, more ability to sort of ignore the problems?
To the regime ignoring the problems, yes. I don't think winning tonight will make them worse. I think it will make them better. I think they can use winning the Open Cup and the extra allocation money and the Champions League as a springboard to sort of replicate a little bit of what DC United did. So although it may give the ownership a little bit of a pass, a little bit of an extension, overall, a win tonight, I think, is going to be vastly more helpful than a loss would be.
Okay, fair enough.
That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping they get the extra money. I hope Octavio comes in. I hope things start clicking. They got the USL team in Bethlehem starting next year. I think, and I'm one of the front office's biggest critics, I think, but I think this could be a turning point for the franchise. We're not going to go on a wild spending spree, but I think things may start to be turning around. I'm cautiously optimistic there.
Okay.
As far as the game tonight go, I was wondering what your opinion is, what you're expecting, and it wouldn't be the Union without a goalkeeper controversy. Who do you think Jim Curtin should start in goal? Should it be McCarthy, who played every game in the Open Cup up until now and got the team where they are in the tournament? Or should it be Andre Blake, who's obviously the better talent and I think substantially the better keeper?
Well, you got Blake coming off that performance against the Revs, right? So his confidence is bursting. But McCarthy has proven capable of doing the job, and I think maybe continuity tonight is more important. Maybe having the team feel as though the things that have been successful in this tournament to this point are still the things that can make them successful. In that case, it's McCarthy. I think that in terms of this game overall, I'll be fascinated to know what kind of energy level Sporting Kansas City has. They rested guys on the weekend, partly for this game, but also because they just needed to rest guys. And they managed to get a draw against the Sounders at home. I guess for me, he's just going to go for it. But if there's a crowd and the atmosphere is good, then Philly really does maybe have an advantage there. I think Sporting wins in the end, Mike. My gut says that. But I could see Philadelphia giving them a real difficult time of it. I don't think it's going to come down to keeper, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I don't think it'll come down to keepers. I just think it's funny the Union have another keeper controversy. I'm really hoping the Union can win. It's a one-off game. Obviously, they're one of the worst teams in the league, but it's MLS. Anything can happen.
Anything can happen.
Yeah, I'm hoping go Union, and let's see what happens tonight. I hope everyone watches. It's actually on a channel.
It is. It's on a channel. It's on ESPN2. Mike, appreciate the phone call, man. Best of luck to your Union.
Thanks.
All right, there goes Mike in Philly. Mike has the Philly accent. I love when people who call me from places with known accents actually have said accent, because it feels authentic. Mike feels like an authentic Philly sports fan, a Union fan, living, dying with his teams. Philly sports fans, okay, maybe they're a little notorious for certain things, but they're also notably passionate. I mean, when we talk about some of the craziest sports radio in the country, Philly gets top of that list regularly because their fans are just out there. Fantastic. 646-832-3909. 646-832-3909. Couple of minutes left here on the show. If you want to get in, if you have thoughts on the U.S. Open Cup tonight, Champions League, maybe get some predictions here. Maybe give me a sense of whether or not you think Manchester United can turn it around at home against Wolfsburg, whether or not Manchester City can go to Germany and beat Gladbach. I doubt it. I very seriously doubt it. Whether Juventus can continue their better than league form in the Champions League against Sevilla. I don't think anybody's going to pick Malmo to beat Real Madrid, but wouldn't it be amazing if they did? Wouldn't that be great? We could have like a Swedish themed party on this show when I got back if Malmo could beat Real Madrid today. You got Astana and Galatasaray. I imagine that's the game a lot of people will not be paying much attention to, but it could be interesting. CSKA Moscow and PSV Eindhoven. Eindhoven off the win over Manchester United. They have to go to Moscow and take on CSKA. You have Atletico Madrid, who right now in La Liga are somewhere down 7th place, I think, right now. Does that sound right, Trev? La Liga standings. Let me just Google said standings. Oh, they're in 5th place right now. So Atletico Madrid today home against Benfica. So we'll see how they do. Diego Simeone and company do in that particular match. 646-832-3909. I'm picking both German teams to win. No, I'm not I'm picking Manchester United to win at home. Manchester United to win against Wolfsburg. Gladbach to beat City. Juve to draw with Sevilla, I think. That's where I'll go with that one. Moscow, CSKA Moscow and Eindhoven. I see a draw there. Shakhtar Donetsk and PSG. Let's see if PSG and where does Donetsk play their games now? I always forget that they're not anywhere close to Donetsk these days. That they have to play hundreds of miles away because of what is a continuing, ridiculous, disgusting, horrific situation in Ukraine. Just thought I'd throw that in there. Not political commentary. I think we can all agree what's happening in Ukraine is fairly ridiculous. All right. Speaking of U.S. Open Cup final, it is great to have it on ESPN2 tonight. I'm ecstatic that we get an actual major television broadcaster in HD showing this game. I am aware that Taylor Twellman and I think Adrian Healy are going to do this game via remote. So they're going to do, or not via remote, but they're going to do the game remotely, probably from Connecticut. And I don't know that says anything about the U.S. Open Cup necessarily, or if it's more about ESPN. And Janusz Mihaly came on the show today, and before we got on the air, we were just sort of, talk about the industry a little bit. And it's an interesting time for the industry. Not that I want to go into some details, and I don't have much, to be honest with you. There you go. But if you want the U.S. Open Cup to matter, if you're ready for the U.S. Open Cup to take the next step, you got to watch, and you got to tell other people to watch, and we've got to get momentum behind this thing. If the U.S. Open Cup is going to take a place among the more important tournaments, the more important competitions, if we want the teams to take it seriously earlier, you need to watch. Got to make this into a big deal. Got to turn this into a game that's got actual interest behind it. I don't remember last year's final very well. I don't. I apologize for that, but I do remember Sporting Kansas City and Seattle at Sporting Park with the penalties and Eddie Johnson. I do remember that game. Eddie in Brooklyn. What's up, man?
Hey, what's good? Just figured I'd bother you one more time before you went on vacation.
Bother me, man. Bother. Go ahead.
Who was the Union fan that called in just before?
Mike from Philly.
Mike from Philly. All right, so kind of, people saying that they don't want the Union to win because it would mask like bigger issues.
Yeah.
It could serve as a turning point because if you remember when DC United were going through the worst season anyone has ever seen, they ended up beating RSL, and people were worried about what they would do in CONCACAF Champions League, and then they just turned around and had the best, worst to first anyone has ever seen in the league, and actually performed pretty well in CCL. Yeah. So,
and Mike mentioned that. Mike mentioned that as a possible. I mean, that's got to be the hope, and I think that's why, if you're a Union fan, you want to win the game because guess what? What's the point of the game? To win trophies. Just you don't ever pass up a trophy. That was what I meant when I said I don't believe in it at all. You never pass up a trophy. I would want the United States to win every trophy possible, whether we ever play good soccer or not, Eddie. I don't care. I mean, I don't care. I don't care about good soccer. I care about trophies. First, I mean, if you can get good soccer and trophies, yeah, more power to you. So we'll see what happens with the Union. They could use it as a springboard, definitely.
Yeah, the main reason I'm calling that was Champions League.
Okay.
I noticed there's a new narrative now surrounding Premier League teams.
Yeah.
That apparently that the Premier League is now so competitive that it's draining the Premier League clubs, and that's why they're not performing well in the Champions League.
I don't think that. I wouldn't buy that for a second. No.
No, I wouldn't either, because then if you're telling me that, then you're telling me that the Premier League wasn't competitive when Chelsea won it. The Premier League wasn't competitive when Manchester United won it. Premier League it's quote unquote always competitive.
Right. Well, it's clear, Eddie, that there's more money in that league now, and that is driving, I guess, improvement of these sides, and it's making it tougher on the top side. But this is also about mismanagement at Manchester United during the Moyes era and the failure to strengthen their team. They finally done so, but now they're still kind of, they're still getting into the Van Gaal era. This is about Jose Mourinho losing his grip on Chelsea. This is about Wenger having lost his grip for a long time on Arsenal, and it's just, again, not strengthening. They didn't sign an outfield player during the window. This is about Manchester City not having the mentality. Again, these are individual issues for me, not necessarily about, England's so hard, of course they can't compete. Bullshit. Sorry.
No, my main thing is, I've been saying this for like the last two seasons. Premier League may have the best, 1 through 20 in the world. But when you compare their top 5 or even their top 6 to the other leagues, they don't compare. There's no elite team in the Premier League. As much as people want to look at a Chelsea or a City, where would they finish in La Liga when you look at the top 3 in La Liga?
Yeah.
Where would they finish? And I just don't think that they're on that level. And Spain specifically is just the top 5 in Spain. I don't think any other league in the world can match it.
Sure. Hey, look, I mean that matters. I think obviously parity is better for the overall story of the season. If you don't necessarily have a team in that mix, the Premier League is going to be more interesting to me if everybody's beating everybody else for the time being than if Chelsea was running away with it or City was running away with it, Eddie. So I mean, it's different strokes for different folks.
Here's my thing, though, with the parity thing. The Premier League doesn't really have parity. That's a myth.
No, I know.
The same 3 teams win it every single year.
I'm aware of this. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't in terms of the championship. But you could argue that, 5 through 20, any of those teams can beat any of those other teams on a given day. Now, that doesn't...
That literally, but that doesn't mean anything if the same team wins it every year.
No, I agree. I'm just saying that in the narrow window of parity that's possible in England, they've gotten a little bit more of it recently, but it still doesn't mean it's, as you said, it still doesn't mean it's parity.
Yeah, because look at the top of the table right now, Manchester United, one of the 3 teams that have won it in the past 10 years on first. If it's not them, maybe it'll be City, one of the 3 teams who have won it that'll end up winning it, and then maybe Arsenal's not going to win it, Tottenham aren't going to win it. Chelsea, if they ever got their stuff together, might win it, but it's going to be one of those same 3 teams, just like it is in La Liga. Just like it is in the Bundesliga, but just like it is in Serie A. Even in Serie A, Inter Milan were atop the table, and they're one of the same 3 teams that have won it the past 10 years. So all this talk about parity, like even MLS, like if people want to talk about MLS's parity, if the Galaxy win it again this year, you can't tell me about parity in MLS.
Yeah. I mean, you'd have to split things up, playoffs. Yeah, and I understand. Eddie, I got to run. Appreciate the call, though, man.
All right, man. Have a good vacation.
All right. Here goes Eddie in Brooklyn. I want to squeeze in one more call because Nick in Toledo has been patient. What's up, Nick?
What's going on, Jason? How are you?
I'm very well. I believe, Nick, you were the one that told me today's like International Podcast Day or something.
It is International Podcast Day. I'm so excited about it. I took the day off of work so I could call into your show, man.
Oh, that's amazing. I don't know much about International Podcast Day, but it sounds awesome. So, yeah, celebrate. Yeah, let's all have a podcast party. I don't know what that means. Whatever. What's on your mind today?
Well, it's a good day because you got International Podcast Day today. Plus, my Red Devils, Manchester United, playing a home game in the Champions League, and they need to bounce back after a difficult loss against Eindhoven. But I think they'll bounce back today against Wolfsburg.
Yeah, I think they'll probably win at home against Wolfsburg. Overall, the state of that team. They're in first place, but as we just kind of outlined with Eddie, nothing seems confirmed in the Premier League right now. Nothing feels solid. Nobody feels like a good team, like an elite team.
No, I agree. I think the Premier League's down clearly when you see how they're playing in Europe. That's definitely an indication. But hey, where this team has been the last 3 years, I'll take top of the table at this point, Jason.
Okay, fair enough. You feeling good about their prospects of staying there, though?
Well, defensively, they haven't really given up many goals. I think when you look at the scoring records in the league this year, they're one of the top teams as far as goals allowed. It's pretty low. The question is always going to be with this team, who's going to score goals? And now they've got Anthony Marshall scoring goals, and they needed a striker up top, and they put Wayne Rooney back at the number 10 spot, which I think he's much more comfortable at. And we still haven't even seen Memphis really click on and do something in the Premier League. Once he gets going, if he gets going, watch out.
Yeah. By the way, I like the way you said that. Anthony Marshall. Anthony Marshall sounds like a cornerback from USC. Anthony Martial sounds like a striker for Manchester United. Nick in Toledo, very good. Thanks for the call, man. Anything else before I let you go?
I just want to say thank you for your show. You do tremendous work both here and on satellite radio, and you make podcasting better because of what you do. So
I appreciate
you and Trevor both.
Nick is a very, very good podcaster in his own right. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate the call. He does his stuff mostly on the NFL. I do soccer, but we all can come together as sports fans and share the love that is, I don't know, whatever. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Soccer Morning. Reminder, tomorrow, Friday, Monday, Jonathan Tannenwald stepping in filling my shoes for 3 days. He'll do an excellent job. 10 a.m. Eastern Time. 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Do not, under any circumstances, send a tweet to Trevor Hayward or at Soccer Morning. Say, where's the show at 9? Because I'm telling you right now, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Jonathan Tannenwald, Soccer Morning. I'll be back on Tuesday. Thank you very much for listening, guys. As always, remember, the Rabble.tv USA-Mexico broadcast, me and Jared Dubois, October 10th, 9:30 p.m. Eastern. You're going to be watching the game anyway. You might as well listen to us. We'll check you out. I'll talk to you on Tuesday. Later.